Hello everyone to my video. So hey, I'm going to be talking about Battle Brothers perks. Why? Because I've gotten really into Battle Brothers again just recently. I've been playing this game ever since it released, and there's been a lot of changes and a lot of sort of thoughts that are changing in the community. Sort of like people's opinions on things have radically changed. Also, a lot of people have done math on some of these perks, and a lot of these perks, they say that they do one thing, and they do the thing, but it just doesn't work out the way that you might expect. So I haven't made a video on YouTube before, but I'm really excited to actually make this video to share my thoughts on the game. I love this game. This is probably my favorite game that I currently play. And I'm currently doing a cultist campaign. It's a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying it. So before I begin, big shout out to other people who have done guide lists. So Carve a Hole, Filthy Robot, Turtle225 has written I believe it's 400-page guide on the perks on Steam. I was listening to it. If you convert that to an audio file, I believe his guide is something like 18 hours of audio, which is crazy. So I listened to all of that. Big shout out to Turtle225 for, I believe he spent at least 200 hours writing that. Probably more, because it's a guide, not just a straight up, what is it? Not just like a collection of his thoughts, right? He kept going, right? I stream on Twitch, so this is probably not going to be the best like YouTube video-ish. It's going to be sort of like a Twitch stream format. So if I ramble or I get stuck, I'm sorry. I'm going to try to keep the video short, but it might happen. Shout out, I stream on Twitch, so come follow me. I am Seawolf Sam at Twitch, and we're gonna start the perk tier list. Okay, other disclaimers. These are my opinions, and if you have different ones, that's great. Please comment and let me know. Also, some of these things I'll try to specify is some perks are good in some builds and some perks are really bad in other builds. So just because I value a perk as low doesn't mean that I don't run it. There are a lot of perks. I think the only perks I don't run are probably perks that I'm going to put in the F tier, but I basically run D through S, okay? The other thing, and I might actually talk about this later in maybe another video, is there are two perks that really almost define the Battle Brothers, basically, your brothers. They are so good that they define the builds, and that's going to be Battleforged and Nimble. And I'll probably talk about that quite a lot. But I'm going to just start, we'll start at the tier 1 perks. I might pull it up so that you guys can see along with it. So the first one is Fast Adaptation. So Fast Adaptation, where did I put Fast Adaptation? So Fast Adaptation, I put in F. I put it in F mainly because, and let's let you, I'll talk about what the perks do. All right, so Fast Adaptation. If you miss the target, you get 10% plus chance to hit the next time, and it grows. So eventually you will hit the target. So you would put this on a brother that really sucks, that has terrible melee stats or really terrible range stats, and eventually they will hit. Fast Adaptation is sort of a troll though for range, is that they will, if you hit a shield for an arrow or it hits something else, it will remove the bonus, which is really annoying. The problem with Fast Adaptation really is that it doesn't scale very well. Like, you need benefits early, right? So Fast Adaptation, the first time you miss, it gives you +0. The second time, it had given you +10. So on average, it's +5 if you're missing 50% of the time. So it's +5 attack. You can basically think about this. If you have a 50% chance to hit, this is a +5 to hit, which is okay. But a lot of the times against enemies, you'll have higher than a 50% chance. So this is getting, it gets worse and worse and worse the better your brothers are. I don't think that there's many reasons why you'd get it. And a big reason is the tier 1 perks. If you look at tier 1 perks. So tier 1 perks, we have Fast Adaptation, Colossus, right? Colossus is probably going to take your perk 1, and then Gifted is probably going to take your perk 2. I would like to say that Fast Adaptation would be used in the early game. Like, a lot of times you're like, oh shit, I have a brother who's not going to make it to the late game. Like, I'm just going to give him Fast Adaptation so he can be useful. A lot of the times you don't care about this. You're going to get Colossus, then Student, and then probably Dodge, right? And then you might go Fast Adaptation. But the problem is that by the time he's level 5, you've probably already killed him, right? Or kicked him off the team. It's just not going to happen. All right, cool. The next one. The next one is Crippling Strikes. Crippling Strikes is also an F tier perk. I do not use Crippling Strikes. Crippling Strikes doesn't really do what it says it does. So it says that it lowers the threshold to inflict injuries by 33% chance. Okay? So if you do a certain amount of health damage to an enemy, you have a chance of giving them an injury. The problem is that some enemies have so much HP that you will never give them injuries. I'm thinking Unholds and Lindworms, right? Unholds will get injuries at the very, very end. At the very, very end. But usually, even with this, you're probably not going to be able to cripple Unholds, right? And then other enemies, they're armored, basically. I'm thinking Orcs. You could injure Orcs, but the problem is that they're very armored. So you're probably not going to have a lot of armor pen. Other things, Goblins. Goblins have such low HP that even without this, you're going to get injuries anyway. Most humanoids, you're going to get injuries anyway. Chosen even, you'll probably get injuries anyway, even without this. So it's just a wasted perk usually. Also, it has to compete usually with Colossus. But this is just basically a worthless perk almost. Next one, Colossus. Colossus, I rank. It's one of the only S tier perks that I rank. I put this on literally every single brother, and a lot of these early perks. If you notice the early perks, right? So the tier 1 perks, we have Fast Adaptations, Colossus, 9 lives, all these, right? They have to compete. You have to ask yourself every single time. You're like, oh, it's good. These you're like Sam. These perks are really, really good in the early game, and that's where they're useful. Well, you have to think, would I choose this over Colossus? And the thing is, you're probably always just going to pick Colossus, right? Tier 2 has another one, Gifted. A lot of times, almost all of my brothers go Colossus, Gifted, right? We'll get to Gifted later, but Colossus I put on literally every single brother. So what Colossus does, it gives you your health points are increased by 25%, right? And you're like, okay, that's cool. So an average brother usually has about 60 HP. So 25% more, that you're thinking maybe like 18, 15, HP, right? So that's 15 stats. That's a lot, right? You have to think that this is about 4 attack. This is 15 stats, right? This is 4 stats. This is 15 stats, right? This gets worse the worse the better your brother gets. This gets better the better your brother gets. So like, let's say you have a brother that has like 80 HP, right? You're getting 20 stats from this, right? Plus, if you go Nimble, right? Nimble and Colossus play off each other. They love each other, right? So if you're going Nimble, you're basically using HP to tank, right? Colossus, you're going to be leveling HP every single time. So if you roll a brother that has 60 natural HP, right? And you do 10 levels of plus 4 HP, you are at 100 HP, right? Colossus is giving you 25 stats, and it's giving you 25 stats in some of the most important stats in the game, right? HP for a Nimble, right? I put this on Battleforge too. Chosen. So the game has recently added a lot of enemies that have high armor ignore, right? The armor ignore, which is called armor ignore, but isn't actually ignore armor. The game mechanics are weird that way. Will do additional damage to the HP. So if you get hit in the armor, additional HP damage will be dealt to you, right? Through the armor, right? This can prevent you from getting injuries. So the higher HP, the higher your injury threshold, just like we were talking about for Crippling Strikes, and it will prevent you from getting injuries. Injuries can be very, very bad. Anyway, let's keep going. 9 lives. 9 lives. So I rank this higher than Fast Adaptations. It's also F tier. I don't know. I've never played with 9 lives, and I gotta say, there's an argument that it could be better on like a tank. Because the thing is that if you have a tank and you die, it will reset all of the bleeds. You don't die, and it gives you plus 15 stats. It gives you plus 15 melee defense, plus 15 range, plus 15 resolve, and plus 15 initiative. And the initiative actually matters here, so that you can get out of there, right? Until your next turn. So I don't know. I'm gonna rank it F. My reasoning for ranking it F tier is mainly due to it doesn't do anything unless you die. It doesn't do anything unless you die, and you shouldn't be dying, right? You shouldn't be dying, but maybe the effective HP of this is pretty high. So I don't know. I'm gonna rank it F tier, but there's an argument that it could be better. The next one is bags and belts. Bags and belts, you don't need bags and belts. I'm gonna rate it B, because I like it. It's so nice. It is so nice, and a lot of the really weird, cool, fun builds use bags and belts. A lot of the most fun I've had in this game have been from bags and belts. People with nets, people with pots, like fire pots, people with acid flasks, people with holy water, throwers that have throwing weapons and a crossbow and a gun, right? They have the big gun, right? Archer builds that have throwing weapons and bows and a duelist weapon and a freaking net in their backpack. Like you just have these crazy builds that have all kinds of stuff, and bags and belts can allow you to do it. Bags and belts gives you 2 extra bag slots. The other thing that I really like about it too, it reduces the fatigue. So normally, like, a weapon will be like 15 fatigue, like for an orc axe, right? It gives you minus 15 fatigue if you have it on your person, right? If you put it in your bag, it's half of that. So you'll have minus 8 if it's in your bag. If you have bags and belt, it costs nothing. So a lot of my range units will be throwers, right? And the throwers want to be duelists. A lot of times you can just put a legendary orc weapon in their bag, right? And so if your thrower ever gets caught out in melee, and they don't have good melee stats. Usually they have only like, I never level melee on my throwers, right? They'll only have like 50 melee stats, right? But the thing is that a lot of times the enemies that walk up to your throwers don't have good melee defense themselves, right? They're like chosen or orcs. Orcs in particular don't have high melee defense, right? And so you can, and usually they're surrounded by your brothers anyway, right? There are so many times where an orc bashes through the line. He stands right next to the fucking, he stands right next to the throwers, and all of a sudden the throwers pull out freaking one-handed orc famed weapons, right? With plus accurate or plus damage and plus armor pen. And they just absolutely destroy, right? So I really like it. And bags and belts allows you to have stuff like that. Pathfinder. I used to never run Pathfinder. And there's been a lot of guides that have been like, yeah, no, you need Pathfinder. You need Pathfinder. I run Pathfinder on every single melee brother. I run it on every single melee brother. The big thing is not actually the minus AP. The big thing is the fatigue, okay? The fatigue is so nice. In the recent update, enemy fortifications are... enemies have fortifications now. They used to not do that. It used to always be 2 people in a line, and you could always engage people in basically open field. So Pathfinder really wasn't that great, right? But nowadays, like goblins are always on hills. They're always like way up in these fortified locations, and you always have to come to them, right? I used to never walk to my enemy. I always had range units. The enemy comes to me. I don't come to them, right? There are so many more fights where I have to go to the enemy, right? I have to go up the hill. I have to go to these places, right? Because they have the fortified locations. They'll just stay behind their fortifications and shoot you to death, right? Other things, sand. They added a shit ton of sand. It's coarse. It's irritating. It gets everywhere. And the sand, desert, I think it's like -8 fatigue from walking the desert, or maybe -6. That's insane. So I almost take Pathfinder as a fatigue perk nowadays. I take it on every single melee brother. It's really good. It's really, really good. You don't need it on everyone, but it's super nice. I highly recommend it. Adrenaline, I'm going to put in C tier. You can use it. I personally don't use it. I think it costs too much. It costs 20 fatigue. They nerfed the adrenaline recover cycle. So you used to be able to cheese the system where you adrenaline and then you recover, and you could just keep doing that in a big cycle. You can't do that anymore. I think adrenaline still has uses. It's not a damage perk. A lot of people think, oh, my adrenaline brother deals so much damage. Actually, adrenaline reduces the amount of damage that you can deal. The point of adrenaline is it bursts your damage, because the enemy can go, you can then go, right? You then, at the end of your turn, adrenaline, and you can go again. So a great example would be a 2-hander. You kill one person, you berserk, you killing frenzy, you kill you attack the person next to you, the other person next to you, you adrenaline. Now you can kill the person who's already weakened. You're still killing frenzied. And then you can like get a reach weapon and you can kill another thing, right? So you can basically, before the enemy, 3 enemies move up on you, and you can kill all 3 of them before they can even do anything. So it bursts your damage, which is really, really nice. I don't run adrenaline on anyone. I personally don't run it on anyone, but I will give it C because it is good. I would say that it's good. And I think that there's a lot of really cool builds that you can do with it. Problem is it costs 1 AP and it costs 20 fatigue. It will fatigue you out. You need a brother with a decent amount of fatigue to do this. All right, recover. Recover is a trap. I see a lot of new players putting recover. I don't run recover on anyone but the banner at this point. It just doesn't matter. It really just doesn't matter. A lot of it is because the recover isn't a lot. So, a 2-handed Battleforged brother. My current 2-hand Battleforged brothers, a lot of them are running the Orc Axe, right? The Orc Axe has a ton of fatigue, right? It costs, I think, 34 fatigue to wield. But with Axe spec, it only costs 15 fatigue to swing, and you get 15 fatigue back every single time. So you can always swing the Orc Axe, right? Recover, those brothers, they don't have high pools of fatigue, okay? They have maybe 60 fatigue, right? Recover, I really hate the way it works. So you get your fatigue back not at the end of your turn, at the beginning of your turn. So let's say you used up all 60 fatigue. You've used up all 60 fatigue. At the start of your turn, you're down to 45 fatigue because you've recovered 15 fatigue naturally, right? So recover, if you use the ability recover, you get 20 fatigue back, right? It just doesn't matter. It just really doesn't matter. That's wasting a whole turn. And what does that 20 fatigue do for you? You get one extra swing. Well, you could just swing now. That's the big thing, I think, with recover, is that a lot of the times, my brothers, they will use Berserk and Killing Frenzy to get multiple swings at the beginning of a fight. And at the end of the fight, they do one swing at a time because they have enough fatigue to always attack every single turn, right? You don't need recover because you don't need fatigue in the super, super late fights, usually. And usually when it does, it doesn't save you anything. Recover in this situation, if you had a guy with 60 fatigue, recover doesn't do anything for you. It doesn't even save you a single extra attack. It doesn't give you a single extra attack. Recover did nothing at that point. You were better off just swinging. It has uses, so I won't say it's useless. I would put it in D. It's really good in like banners. My banner currently has 80 fatigue, right? And the rally, I think, is like 35 to rally. It's a lot of fatigue, right? But getting back like 30 fatigue and one recover is really nice when you can't do anything as the banner anyway. So let's say you're rallying. Well, a lot of times you won't be able to rally. So you're not doing anything anyway. You might as well recover, right? So I put on the banner usually. Student is great. You should put this on a lot of your brothers once you're in the mid game. I'll say that the mid game is day 40. So Turtle would always be like, yeah, early game is 0 through 40. Mid game is like 40 to 80, and then 80 plus is like late game. That's a little bit. I would, if those are the terms, I would add a extreme late game. Extreme late game starts in probably around 200, because when you're in the extreme late game, it plays a little bit different than the late game. Extreme late game is very interesting. Anyway, I would not take student on your first brothers. Okay. Wait until day 40 before you'd start taking student, or take student on people you're going to babysit. Student will give you the perk back. So what student does is give you 20% extra XP, and it gives you the perk back, which is very, very good. But a lot of times you're competing with Colossus, right? You're like, hey, I'm wearing like 40, 60, armors. I'm wearing like the 80 leather armors, right? And my hats, I have 30 armor hats, right? I only have 60 HP. I need something. A lot of times you just take Colossus. So my early game brothers will never have student. Yeah, like my starting brothers, there's never a time where my starting brothers will ever get student. Almost ever. I will always take Colossus first, because those early stats are just really, really important. All right, let's go to the tier 2 perks. All right, tier 2 perks. Executioner. Executioner, I'm putting in D tier. I'm going to put this above Recover. Executioner, God, it's not that great. But you got to say it is extra damage. And there's very few perks that give you extra damage. You're like, but Sam, you put Crippling Strikes down here. Why are you putting Executioner here? Executioner can benefit without Crippling Strikes. There's a lot of enemies that will be injured, and then you can get that extra damage. And a lot of times that extra damage can be meaningful. It will kill them rather than it will be enough to kill them, right? 20% extra damage is a decent amount, right? I still don't think it's good. A lot of times injured enemies would die in one shot anyway. Injuries are hard to get sometimes. Some enemies are just immune to injuries altogether. Basically like lindworms will never be injured because their HP pool is just so freaking high. Ancient undead are just completely immune to injuries. I find that the ancient undead fights are some of the hardest fights in the game, and Executioner not working on them is really a dead perk. You can have dead perks. I don't run Executioner on anyone right now, but I could see it. A lot of times this would be where you give up gifted. You gave up gifted for Executioner. Bullseye. Bullseye, oh my god. I used to run Bullseye on every single range unit. And the thing is I still do. I still run it on every range unit that has a bow. If you are a bow range unit, I will still run Bullseye. But Bullseye fucking sucks. God, it's a really awful perk. So what Bullseye does, so normally when you're shooting a ranged unit, right, you have to shoot, if there's something in front of them, you get a minus 75% accuracy to hit the thing behind the thing, right? That's awful. Minus 75 is so bad. So let's say you had an 80% chance to hit, right? You now have a 20% chance to hit. Super bad, right? It's super bad, okay? The problem is in a large battlefield, when you have a lot of units, a lot of times, and people, I've seen a lot of people say, well, Bullseye encourages you to do, make bad choices, right? They're like, well, you're changing your 20% chance to hit to a 40% chance to hit, which is still worse than the 80% chance to hit. You should just shoot 80s all the time. My argument to that is a lot of times I have no open shot. There's not a single 80 shot. Every single one of the enemies is behind someone. Every single enemy. There's not a single clear shot. And a lot of times you're not going to move because you're not going to go. You're like, oh, well, you can reposition to get a better shot. No, a lot of times you can't, right? So your archer's just wasted, right? And a lot of times it's just better to do it. It's just better to get Bullseye and make your 20% that you're going to shoot anyway 40%. The big thing also with Bullseye is there are a lot of the reason you're making an archer, okay? You're like, hey, why would you make this rather than this or this? This is the most damage, okay? Throwing weapons are the most damage, okay? Crossbows are really cool. They're not the most damage, but they can like one-shot people. It's really cool. They do a lot of armor pen. Why are you making a bow? The reason you're making a bow is to take out specific enemies, okay? There are going to be specific enemies that you really hate. Necromancers. The Gilded Gunners are awful. Goblin Shamans. Goblin Overseers. These are the, there are brothers who are enemies that are really awful, and you want to take them out. Hexen, right? You want to be able to shoot these things. Every one of those things, Hexen stand behind. There are creatures in front of Hexen. Orc Shamans are Goblin Shamans. There are enemies that stand in front of them, right? The Gunners, the Gilded Gunners, there are people that stand in front of them. Every single one of those guys, there are people you want to that stand in front of them, and you want to be able to get them. And a lot of times you take those 40% shots. Anyway, if you're a new player, don't really take Bullseye. I wouldn't take Bullseye, but I take it on all my bow units. And I'll generally make 3 bow units. So I'll run it probably on 3 brothers in a company. I tend to do a lot more range than a normal person would. Dodge. Dodge is really good. But it's not good. It's not like... God. So, Dodge... I used to hate Dodge. Well, I used to love Dodge. And then I found out how it worked and I hated it. And now I'm loving it again. So let's describe Dodge. So Dodge gives you 50% of your initiative as melee defense and range defense, which is crazy. People will generally, in light armor, have 80 initiative, which means that Dodge is giving you plus 12 melee defense. Melee defense is the best stat in the entire game. It's the best stat in the game. Not only does it give you 12 melee defense, it gives you 12 range defense. That's great. Dodge is so good. Oh my god, this is amazing. Dodge is great. Problem is it's not your initiative. It's your current initiative. And initiative goes down based off of the amount of stam that you have acquired. So throughout the game, your initiative is going to go to 0. It's just going to go to 0, okay? Or near 0, which means that dodge goes to 0, okay? And if you are wearing heavy armor, dodge does like nothing to you because you are adding the fatigue. You have no initiative to begin with. And you're like, but Sam, you can level initiative to raise your dodge. No, if you level initiative, you are an idiot. They're like, okay, so let's say the best initiative roll you can get is a +5, right? +6 if you have 3 stars in it. Sure, we'll do that. +6 because you have 3 stars in it. What is +6? What is 15% of +6? That's right. It's less than 1. You get less than 1 melee defense every single time you get a max initiative roll. You should never, ever raise initiative. It never matters. It never matters. There are enemies that are always going to be faster than you, goblins, and there are enemies that are always going to be slower than you, which is orcs, right? Our heavy orcs, right? Or zombies, right? Or undead. They're always going to be slower than you, right? It doesn't matter. Initiative doesn't matter. But what dodge does is it takes people who have high initiative already, which is a nimble brother. If you have a nimble armor or light armor, it will give you a little bit of defense. I don't run this on nimble people. I run this on basically only one person, and that is the fencer. I run it on the fencer, and fencer is a unit that you will build for the late game. I think fencer is very good. I think it's a very niche build, and I think everyone should have one fencer because they're just fun. They're fun. And it allows you to utilize the legendary sword. The fencer I'll run with dodge and early brothers. Brothers I don't care about. So a lot of times my leveling thing, I'll go Colossus, gifted, dodge. Dodge will be my third pick on brothers that I don't care about. If you're a brother that's really, really bad, you're going to have dodge. Because in the early game, you have light armor, and that melee defense matters a lot. It's like having an extra shield. Dodge is very, very good in the early game. But I run it almost on no one late game. I don't run it on nimble frontliners. I don't run it on my range units. I just don't run it. Mainly because I use my fatigue, and dodge doesn't do it. But it's not a terrible perk. All right. Fortified Mind. Fortified Mind, I'm going to put behind Adrenaline. It's okay on tanks, and it is really good on banner. You're just going to put it on banner. I put it on C mainly because it is the quintessential banner perk. This is something, for a normal brother, this is something like 10 stats, which is not good. Like 10 or 12 stats, and it's bad stats. Resolve is not a very good stat, right? So like you have to think, like Colossus can be 25 HP, right? Which is a good stat, right? Dodge is 12 melee defense at its best, right? This is like 10 resolve. It's okay. It's okay. What's good with this is you put it on a banner. The banner, it can be like 20 resolve plus, right? So it's okay. It's okay. You could put it on tanks too, which is pretty good. Resilient. Resilient's really bad. God, I put it here. I might run it on Nimble Brothers sometimes. So if you have a late game Nimble frontliner, right? Like you are a two-handed Nimble frontliner, right? Or a Nimble duelist frontliner. You're gonna get messed up by cleavers. So Nimble is like, if you, let's say like you have the 60, right, and you level it up to 100 because you get 10 levels of plus 4 HP, so you have 100 HP, right? And then you have Colossus, which gives you 25% more, so you're at 125 HP, right? Those types of brothers are about equivalent to a 300 Battleforge. They're about the same, okay? They're not as good. They're not quite as good, but they have a little bit more fatigue. and that's nice. And they're about the same. The only reason they're not the same is that all the late game fights have cleavers. The Chosen have two-handed cleavers. The Ancient Undeads have tons of cleavers. They have the one-handed ones. They have two-handed cleavers as well. The Ancient Undead have lots of ways of making you bleed. And Orcs have crazy cleavers. And all of those cleavers have crazy armor pen, right? You're going to bleed. For anyone who doesn't know, a cleaver spec person will do 20 damage to you with its blood. Okay, so if you get hit with a cleaver and it's cleaver spec person, it will do 20 damage over 2 turns. So it'll do 10 and then 10, right? The way that Nimble works is that it increases your HP by 2.5 basically, or your HP is equivalently 2.5 worth of damage, right? So for a Nimble brother, this 20 bleed becomes 50. It's the effect of doing 50 damage, right? Which is nuts. It really is. And Resilient drops that to 25. Okay? It basically saves you the effective HP of 25 every single time you get hit with blood. I use Resilient for Nimble frontliners, just so that they can survive bleeds. Bleeds can just devastate you, but Resilient's really not that great. It's really not that great. Steelbrow is okay. It's okay. I rank it here. A little bit above Adrenaline. You should put it on tanks. That's basically the only person I would put it on. But it's okay. It's a defensive perk. It saves some injuries. I don't really run it on anyone else. All right, Quick Hands. Quick Hands is amazing. I put it below Colossus because I don't run Quick Hands on literally everyone, but basically everyone I'm putting on Quick Hands. I'm putting it. It's so good. I see a lot of people running two-handers, and they don't run a reach weapon. I don't understand this. It blows my mind. You have a guy with a two-handed mace, and he beats the shit out of this other guy, right? He just smashes him. He berserks. He killing frenzies. He becomes amazing. He has another AP. He can swing again. But there's no one around him. And if he's already... And he doesn't have enough AP to move and then hit. So he just stands there and he wastes his turn. He wastes the berserk. He wastes the killing frenzy. I don't understand. I do not understand these people. You use Quick Hands... Okay, use Quick Hands, put a pole arm in his thing. Or if he's a mace, you can put a pole mace because you get the, the fatigue bonus if you have the weapon mastery. So, and thematically it's cool. So like my mace two-handers, there are basically 4 two-handers that I'll run. I run cleaver two-handers, I run axe two-handers, I run hammer two-handers, and I run mace two-handers, okay? All 4 of those will have their respective, their respective pole variety in their backpack, right? So you'll have the hammer reach, the long pole hammer, the long axe, and the pole mace, right? I guess I also run, I'll run a sword two-hander as well. But if sword two-handers and cleaver two-handers, I'll put pole arms for theirs, right? Anyway, Quick Hands is amazing. Every range unit I make has throwing weapons, basically, with the exception of the gunner crossbow brothers. But a lot of times my throwers are thrower bow mixes. And having Quick Hands is amazing because then you can start with the bow and you can get a shot, and then you can switch to throwing weapons and you can throw, right? And then you can grab more and throw, right? If you're running bags and belts and Quick Hands, if you're running this, you should be running this. But a lot of times you run this and you don't even run this. All right, let's keep going. Gifted is really good. I've talked about this before. A lot of times I'm picking Colossus, and then I'm picking Gifted. Gifted just gives you the stats in the areas that you want them, right? It just gives you the stats that you need at the time that you need it. I always pick Gifted in the early game. In the late game, if I have a really good brother that needs the build, that's the thing, that needs the build. It's not about just having a good brother. I need another perk. If I need another perk, sometimes I'll remove Gifted, but almost everyone runs Gifted because it's just really good. Just really, really good. Right. Let's keep going. Backstabber. Backstabber doesn't work the way that you think it does. I'm going to put it in D. So Backstabber, it is N-1 is the percent chance to hit, right? So Backstabber, if you have two people next to hit a person, you get +5 to hit, okay? It doesn't matter if you are using a reach weapon to hit it, right? It is the amount of brothers -1 plus times 5. That's how it works. So if there's two brothers, you get +5 to hit. If there's only one brother next to him, you get 0. That's how it works. It doesn't matter if that's you or not. I used to think that, you have the front lines. They hit, right? They hit. They merge together, right? And so you'll have two of your people next to one of the enemies, right? And then you'll have your backliners, and the backliners will hit the people in the front, right? And I thought that would give you +10% to hit, because that's okay. +10 to hit would be really good. No, it's only +5. This generally gives you 0% chance to hit, and sometimes gives you 5 when the battle's actually happening. You're like, but Sam, at the very end, when I'm trying to dagger spam someone, I can get up to +25 to hit. You could. If you have a complete surround, you can get +25 to hit. But this perk is usually 0 melee attack, and it's sometimes 5. In that regards, it might even be down here. I'm gonna leave it up. It's okay. It's okay. You can make use of it. Anticipation. God, I don't like anticipation. So I put it above recover. Anticipation gives you at least 10 range defense, and if you have a decent amount of range levels and you're far away, it can give you up to like 20 or 30. The problem with anticipation is it's sort of an all or nothing perk a lot of times, and you're like, oh, there's no such thing as an all or nothing perk. It sort of is. A lot of times the AI will just not shoot the guys who have high range defense. So they're like, well, I'm just going to build range defense on everyone. No, it just doesn't matter. Ranged attacks don't matter. Typically, you're going to eventually you're going to start with nimble and light armors, and you're going to transition to battle forge and heavy armors. When you have heavy armor, actually, let's just look at a bow. Let's just look at a goblin bow. Give me a sec. I'm going to show you a goblin bow real quick. All right, let's go up here. So let's just look at weapons. Range weapons, bows. All right, sweet. So you're being hit by goblins, and you're like, oh my god, the goblins are doing things. It deals 20 to 40 damage. That's actually a lot if you get hit by a lot of goblins, right? You're like, okay, that's fine. Versus armor, it does 55% versus armor. These things bounce. They just bounce, and you're like, but it ignores 35%. No, that's not how it works. So let's look at this. Let's say it rolls a 40. Okay? With this 55%, it's going to be about 20. It does about 20 damage, okay? And then 35% of that will go through. So it rolls a 20, and then 35% of that will go through. So that's, 8? Okay? Well, if 8 minus 10% of your current armor, right? Well, if you have 300 armor and you just took 20, right? You're still basically at 300. 10% of that, you are taking, you take zero damage. You get to take 0 damage. So it's minus 30, right? So this bow, at its max hit, does 20 damage to your armor, and that's it. Armors plink off of you. Our arrows just plink off your armor, basically. It's crazy. It's crazy. You don't need ranged defense. In the early game, arrows are very, very scary. And a lot of times, and when I was a new player, I thought about it the same. I needed anticipation. I was like, man, I really want anticipation because the early raiders, they really just shoot me up and it's just awful and it's terrible. You don't need anticipation. Late game, you just don't need anticipation. It just doesn't matter. All right, whew. Keep going. All right, so Shield Expert. Shield Expert's okay. You take this on tanks. I'm actually putting this below Steel Brow. Shield Expert gives you about what is it? So it gives you passively around 6 melee defense, or 5 for the heater shield. But you'll generally get a legendary shield, right? So like, let's say you have a legendary shield with like plus 30 melee defense or something crazy, something like, or what was plus 25? You'll get like 6 or 7, and then when you shield wall, you'll get another 6 or 7. So Shield Expert can give you up to like 14 melee defense, which is pretty good on a tank, because the tanks are the only people who are going to be shield walling. Battle Brothers is a little bit weird. In the early game, you run shields because archers are scary. Archers are crazy good in the early game, right? Enemy archers versus you, not your archers. Your archers are actually good in the late game, so it flip flops. So you run a lot of shields in the early game, but once you get any armor at all, or nimble, once you get nimble or anything like that, once you get some brothers with some stats, you just stop wearing shields. Everyone transitions to two-handers, right? It just doesn't matter. You will have 1 or 2 brothers, though, that will have shields, because you'll have a tanks. You need tanks versus lindworms. I used to not run tanks. I currently run tanks because of lindworms. There's no answer, in my opinion, other than tanks for lindworms. Or it's the easiest answer, right? And with a tank, you want to maximize melee defense. Melee defense gets better the more and more melee defense you have. It's exponentially better the more melee defense you have. And shields one way of maximizing melee defense. All right. Woo! We keep going through this. I'm going to go a little bit faster. All right, Brawny. You don't need it on everyone, but it's fairly good. With Brawny, so a lot of times you have like the big heavy armors are minus 20 and then minus 40, so like minus 60 fatigue. On minus 60 fatigue, you get 20 fatigue back. So this is 20 fatigue, right? If this is like 20 to or 15 to 25 HP, this is about at the best it's 25 fatigue. And fatigue is really good. Fatigue is very, very good. And you're like, Sam, why do you rate it so lower? Because once you get the like legendary stuff, this is only gonna give you maybe like 12, 10, right? And it's okay. That's okay. That's still okay. You don't need it if you're doing fatigue neutral, but it's still okay. It's still okay. You only run this on Battleforge brothers with heavy armor, but you don't need it on everyone. All right, Relentless. There is one build that you're putting Relentless on. You are putting Relentless on, 2. You can put it on Overwhelm Gunners, which is a fun build, and the Fencer. And for those builds, it's required. It's a required perk. I highly recommend never picking Relentless. But for those 2 builds, it's sort of required, and it's sort of good, so... Rotation. Rotation saves lives. You can use the smoke pots. You can just be good at the game. But rotation saves lives. If you're playing on Iron Man, you should have rotation. If you're not playing on Iron Man, you should have rotation. You should at least... You don't need everyone with rotation, but having a few people with rotations is really good, especially if you tanks. Generally, tanks having a few tanks with rotation is really good. Yeah, rotation saves lives. It's really good. All right, cool. Keep going. Rally the troops. You'll have exactly one brother with rally the troops. I'll put it in B tier because it's really important. It's the only reason you have the banner. It's his only job, and you need it. Taunt. I think that this is a troll. I don't want my tanks really doing this. I want my tanks shield walling. I want my tanks to be sturdy and to survive. They don't have the fatigue to do taunting. Taunting also just doesn't do anything a lot of the times. Taunt is a... I use tanks for the sides of my formation if I'm not using spears, and then I will use them versus lindworms, and just taunt just doesn't do anything for that. I'm going to skip melee weapon masters for now. We'll keep going. Reach advantage. God, it's really bad. So this is like 0 to 10 melee defense, right? And you're like, but what about that time when I killed all 3 people and then I swung and it was amazing? Then you don't have enemies near you, brother. If you kill literally everyone around you, you're not going to take advantage of the reach advantage, right? Because you've killed everyone. Everyone's already gone. You've swung everyone, right? Like, this is, I don't know. The only saving part of reach advantage typically is like 5 melee defense, maybe. The saving point of reach advantage is that it's melee defense, which is the best stat in the game. So, it's hard. And sometimes this is 0 melee defense. And a lot of times when you are, when you need melee defense is when your brother is injured and tired and surrounded. Reach advantage is not a good tool for that, because a lot of times my brother is breaking, his stats are reduced, he's injured, he's bleeding. He doesn't want to spend his time doing these massive fatigue turns where he's swinging all around him. He also probably won't. You have to hit as well, right? It just doesn't do as much as you think. Overwhelm. Overwhelm is bad, but fun. Just like I put it down here, okay? Because a lot of times it doesn't do anything. A lot of times the enemy goes before you anyway. So you need a brother with a lot of initiative. And initiative is a terrible stat. You should just be making your brother better instead of wasting your time with initiative. Like, why are you doing this with Overwhelm? The reason for it is a really fun build. It's a really, really fun build. And it plays different. You can put injuries and you can put injuries and overwhelms and fear, and you put it with a cannon, and it's a meme. This is basically for the cannon build, only. I'm trying to think of anything else. Maybe on your fencer, but even then the fencer just doesn't seem to care. I might put it on the fencer. I don't know. It just doesn't really matter. Fearsome. I think fearsome is pretty weak. A lot of people really love fearsome. If you want, you can put it on. It just is a very, very hard chance to actually ever do anything. I think it's better than Overwhelm. Having your opponent lower morale is more important than Overwhelm, because the debuff stays there forever, right? Whereas this is one turn. This always works. And once they rally, or once they, once they flee away, they're done, right? They are done. So it's effectively killing them without actually killing them. The problem is that fearsome just doesn't proc. A lot of times you would have gotten the morale check anyway, or it just doesn't matter. And the other thing, to add insult to injury, the hardest fights in the game are Ancient Undead. And Ancient Undead are immune to fearsome, right? Or the other ones are Lindworms. Lindworms do not give a fuck about fearsome. They're immune to fearsome, and you're like, but Sam, their morale can lower. They have so much morale that it's always 5%. You always have a 5% chance to change their morale, no matter what you do with Lindworms. It's because their morale is insane. All right, keep going. Lone Wolf. It's really strong, but where the fuck do you put it? What build are you making with Lone Wolf? I run this on one brother, and that is the tank. I'll have one of my tanks be a Lone Wolf tank, and that's about it. It gives you insane amounts of stats. It's really, really strong. The problem is that when you're alone, you will die. And, maybe that's what you wanted. Underdog. It's pretty mediocre, but it's the best stats in the game. So Underdog gives you the melee stats, right? And maximizing melee stats really matters. The other thing about Underdog, so you're like, but didn't you just say, so this is about 5 melee defense. Didn't you just say reach advantage was about 5 melee defense? Why do you like Underdog more than reach advantage? Surely there's a problem here. It's because reach advantage maxes out. Like reach advantage, you can get like, swing, and you get like 30 melee defense. You get 30 melee defense when you don't need it with reach advantage. With Underdog, you get the melee defense when you need it. You get the melee defense when you are surrounded. When you're in a bad situation, Underdog is there for you. And I think it's fairly strong. I don't think you run it on everyone. A lot of times this is my for my two-handed builds, this is the perk that I give up. Like 9 times out of 10 is that like I want a gifted. If I took gifted early, I'll give up Underdog later on. This will be my lost. I sacrificed Underdog for gifted, basically, in my builds. And sometimes I'll have to sacrifice both if I really need the perks. All right, cool. Let's keep going. Footwork. Footwork is terrible. I think footwork, in my opinion, is the worst perk in the entire game. I would never run it. It costs so much. Your backliners don't need this. Also, yeah, I would say that footwork is the worst perk in the entire game. It costs an insane amount. And it's almost entirely due to it costing the fatigue, right? The fatigue, it makes it, it's a bad perk. Berserk. Berserk is very, very good. Sorry. So Berserk, put it up in A. I put it below student. You don't need Berserk on everyone. A lot of times the community really likes these new zero stam builds. So Berserk obviously gets no benefit from that. If you have no fatigue to use the extra AP on, then Berserk is not good for you. But I think that, they're really Berserk allows the fun builds, right? You're not having fun doing the swing once, end my turn, swing once, end my turn, swing once, end my turn. No, you want the really cool, flashy ones. You want the one where you do the Bardici swing and you get 2 kills over there, and then you take the Berserk and you switch to, some kind of like a what is it? What's the sword lance? You switch the sword lance and you do a 3 reap afterwards, right? You get these, these pentakills. This is what you're playing the game for, and Berserk allows you to have the really cool plays, and use the fatigue, right? If you're gonna have fatigue, you're using it for Berserk. It allows you to get more hits in, right? It's super, super good. It's a lot of extra damage too, right? Because you're swinging, instead of swinging once, you're swinging twice, which is twice as much damage. So effectively, Berserk is allowing you to double your DPS, which is really good. Headhunter. Headhunter is bad, but fun. I'm going to put it here. It's a bad perk. You don't want to be hitting the head. You want to be hitting the chest. Everyone wants to be hitting the chest. But you can make builds with especially legendary weapons. A lot of legendary weapons will have like plus chance to hit head, or orc one-handed axes are incredibly good, right? They do an additional 50% more damage. It's crazy good, right? And Headhunter allows you to capitalize on that. There are brutes, there are jesters, there are there's all these benefits. Flails have a guaranteed chance to hit the head. Right, you can do some really cool builds with Headhunter. I would stay, if you're new to the game, stay the fuck away from Headhunter. But if you experienced it, you can have some fun. And I really like it. Nimble. Nimble is the best perk in the game. I'm ranking it number 1. The reason it's for the best perk in the game is because you use it in the early game. Getting to level 7 is so important to get Nimble. It increases your HP, or your effective HP, by 2.5 times, which is just insane. And it allows you to take really hard fights. Late in the game, Nimble dies off. Battleforge is strictly better than Nimble, and people are like, but Sam, actually Nimble's better. No. A Battleforged 400 armor is always going to be better. It's just always going to be better. And the legendary armors are really fucking good, right? The Idrak armor, the Black Monolith armor, the Davcool armor, all of these armors are insane. They give you HP back, they regenerate themselves, they reflect damage. Like the super heavy legendary armors, those are just the ones that you always get, right? But you can get, let's just look at this. Let's just look at some of the let's look at some of the legendaries. Legendary armors. All right. The paddings, yeah. So you get paddings up to 350, 400, right? I've had a coat of plates that was like 380, right? You put Lindworm on it, you have 440, right? You can get up to 460, right? With Battleforge. It is crazy good. But that's the extreme late game, right? But the thing is that you could say that those are all win more. You can beat the entire game with Nimble. I don't think you could beat the entire game without Nimble and without Battleforge, right? And Nimble comes early. Nimble comes so much earlier. You can get it early. You don't need items. You can be wearing Raider armor. You can put it on Trash Brothers that are just going to be, but it will just be great. I think Nimble is the best perk in the game. And I put it up there. Battleforge. So I've been talking about Battleforge. Battleforge is strictly better than Nimble in the extreme late game. But that's like day 300 plus, my brother, right? Like day 300 plus, your Battleforge becomes strictly better. When you're doing all those locations, though, you're going to be running a mix of Nimble and Battleforge. The early brothers run Nimble. If you know someone's going to go super late game, you can build them Battleforge, right? With the expectation that you will then get the late game armors. The reason why I think Battleforge also is better is the whole point of this game is to have fun, right? And a lot of the fun of it is to use the really cool items, right? You want to, this is a really fun perk. You get tons of damage. It's lots of fun, right? This is a really fun perk because it allows you to use the super heavy items, right? The super cool heavy armors and stuff, right? All right, let's keep going. We talked about Fearsome already. Let's talk about Duelist. All right, Duelist. Duelist is crazy good. Crazy good. It is a lot more damage. I don't really run Duelist frontliners anymore. What I use my Duelist for is throwers. So the throwers get benefits for Duelist, right? And then I use the Duelist one-handed weapons, the legendary one-handed weapons, on my archers. Like, my archer will be sitting there, he'll pling a few arrows, he'll switch to the throwing weapons, and then when the enemy comes and stands next to him, he thinks, oh, I'm going to beat this poor little thrower. He's wearing light armor, and he's defenseless, right? And then he pulls out a legendary one-handed mace and bashes the fucking orc's skull in with it, right? Because he's a duelist. Duelist is crazy good. Crazy good. Super high damage. Very good. Killing Frenzy. Putting Killing Frenzy in B. This is damage perks are really, really low. This gives you 25% more damage. There's not a lot of things that actually give you more damage. The problem is you have to set it up. Berserk, these things will happen, right? Berserk and this will happen, right? Killing Frenzy doesn't happen as much, right? I think the AP is more valuable than the extra damage, but the extra damage is good. This is effectively 100% more damage. This is 120. This makes this 125% more damage, right? So like, it's good. It's good. This could be up to like 75% more damage because you could swing 25, swing another 25, right? It's good. It's good. It's good. And most of my late game builds that are like having fun will have Killing Frenzy. Indom, they keep nerfing Indom. They keep nerfing poor Indom. It's still good, but like, my God, I run this only on tanks now, and I don't even use it. I might not even run it. I might just only shield wall. I don't usually even Indom anymore. You used to be able to Indom right before the orcs hit you, and then the orcs hit you, and then you're good. But you can't really do that anymore. All right, let's do the weapons perk real quick. Throwing axes. Throwing axes are insane. They've made you get additional 60% damage. What the fuck? Additional 60% damage? And they are, to put in perspective, a throwing weapon is about 30% more accurate than a bow, right? 30% more accurate. It's crazy. It's crazy. So like, if you are standing right next to someone and you're throwing a throwing weapon, it's almost guaranteed to do at least the damage that the bow does, sometimes even more. It's crazy. The only damage that's better than this is the legendary warbow. Legendary throwing weapons don't really do very much because you're going to be using the heavy throwing weapons from the north. So it's sort of sad. These don't really scale very much, but you can get them really early on. A named warbow will be better damage, and a named crossbow can be better damage. But I run both. I will always run both, generally. All right, cool. Other thing, cleaver. Cleaver spec is good for whips. Whips are good. Extra blood is really good. The two-handed cleavers are really, really good. You always get a legendary two-handed cleaver from the cave, which is really, really nice. So you always make one of your brothers a two-handed cleaver brother, always. And yeah, cleaver is just really good. Daggers get +1 or -1 AP, so you can do 3 times, which is glorious. You use the mace, you bash in the guy's head, and then you use the tall dagger and you death blow him, and it's really, really good. And then you can stab. It's very good. You can make a designated dagger. I don't do that. What I do is a dagger mace build. Crossbow. The crossbow spec gives you extra damage, which is really, really nice. The extra pen is really good. Also, by this reason, I'm not doing this based off of what weapons are good. I'm doing this based off of how much the perk actually helps you. Sorry, in this case. So this helps you a lot. The damage is really, really nice, and then you can use guns with it too. It's really good for guns. It makes you have to run this for guns, right? Because instead of doing 2 turns for 1 shot, you do 1 shot every turn, right? Which is really good. Bows, the +1 range, that is the whole point of running the bows. You are only running... So bows are less accurate and generally less damage than a throwing weapon, right? They are more AP, too, than a crossbow. Like, crossbow doesn't require as much AP. This requires a ton of AP because you are shooting more than once per turn. So why are you using a bow? You are using a bow to hit the targets that are really awful, right? You want to kill that goblin shaman. The whole point you're running the bow, it's the reason why Bullseye sucks. Bullseye is awful, right? But the whole point of running a bow is Bullseye, right? And that one range matters a lot. The one range on a bow, that's the whole point. Now you can make an argument, Sam, I don't run bows. That's fine. Don't run bows and don't run the Bullseye, right? But like, if you're gonna run bows, and I would have 2 or 3. They're really nice. I generally will have at least two of my throwers will be bow as well. And they're the people with the highest accuracy. And I will get Bullseye against my better judgment. And I will shoot that fucking necromancer. And I will shoot those gunners from the Gildeds. And I will shoot the goblin shaman. And it's very satisfying. But yeah, bows are sort of weak. But the bow perk is very good. All right. Billhook. I put Billhook next. The reason for that is you get -1 AP. You can having 5 is really nice. There's some weird builds where you use a duelist weapon and then swap to a 5 AP polearm. I don't understand that because the duelist weapon is always just going to be better. This would be for a designated polearm. I don't like designated polearms, so I would basically never run this. The only time I considered running it, I currently in my Cultist campaign, the very first legendary weapon, I'm currently doing a Cultist campaign. The first legendary weapon I got was a plus damage, plus armor. So it's got 2 extra things. Legendary War Scythe, which is crazy. And it was like a near max roll. The item is insane. And so for Reap, you might want it. So I got one dude with it right now. So I did actually spec it. But I'm going to rank it high because it is -1. Though I don't really like Billhooks. Speaking of things I don't like, maces. Maces suck. They're awful. But the mace ability is really good. It's basically required if you want to use the meme. So the meme is you have a legendary one-handed mace or a regular mace. It doesn't really matter, but usually late game you want a legendary one-handed mace. You get the guaranteed hit to the head. Now you've procced Headhunter, right? And then you switch to a duelist one-handed orc axe, and you smash the guy's brains in with the orc axe, right? Spears really good. Spear mastery really, really good. Basically required if you're going to use a spearman. They use a lot of fatigue because you're spear walling every single time. I like spearmen. I put 2 on the sides. For my Cultist campaign, I currently have none. I have replaced my spearmen with tanks. I have 2 tanks on the sides, and they act fairly similar. You really don't need a spearman, but I like running them. Every single one of my runs, I've had spearmen, with the exception of this last run. I haven't really found a really good spearman. You need someone with really high fatigue, and you need someone with really high melee attack to be a spearman. All right. Swords. The sword spec is really good. Gives you plus accuracy to hit for your 2-handed swords. I only run 2-handed sword if I get a legendary 2-handed sword, and then it's pretty good. Otherwise, the 200 grade sword's not actually that great. Hammer. No, hammer's... I'll put hammer down here. Hammer's not very good. Hammers are good, but the hammer spec is not very good. And the axe is not very good, and the mace is not very good. All 3 of these, insanely good weapons. These are the bread and butter, but their weapon mastery specs are not very good. I always run them, and the reason you're running them are for the fatigue reduction alone. Specifically, the 2-handed axe. The orc 2-handed axe costs a lot, but with this, it becomes 15. So you can have a... you can swing every single time with the 200 orc axe. Whew. All right. That was a very long one. I didn't explain the perks as long as I would want to. There's a lot more details that I would like to go into them, and I sort of rushed past a lot of the talking points. Leave comments if you want me to talk about more. I might make more videos like this to go into a deeper build. All of these perks are fine. I gotta say, I use every single perk with the exception of these ones. I don't run these ones. I've run every single one of these. I know a lot of people are going to be pissed off about me putting Fearsome below. I think Fearsome it just doesn't do anything. It just doesn't do anything. And it doesn't do anything in the fights that I'm scared to fight, which are Lindworms and Ancient Undead. Those are the fights that I struggle with. And I don't have a really good answer for either of them. Other than just raw stats usually. Right, and Fearsome doesn't do anything versus them. Right, you're like, Like, oh, well, Fearstone's really good versus the orcs. I don't struggle with orcs. Orcs don't, like, it's just not a big deal. Yeah. Anyway, have a good one, guys. It was nice to meet you. I'll probably put some other videos on here. Check me out on Twitch. I'm gonna be streaming on Twitch. And thank you for making it to the very end. Have a good one, guys.